Hey there, fellow collectors and YouTube viewers. I'm Dustin, and thanks for joining me. This is going to be my first attempt at creating a video sharing part of my collection, so I hope you enjoy it. I know a lot of you guys are more into a lot of the modern stuff, and certainly like modern as well, but I've got a passion for pre-war and vintage as well, and kind of wanted to share something that I had put together. It was from the Topps 1958 set. At the end of the set, they had their first attempt at an all-star subset, and that's I put it together here, card at a time, and just building it myself. I decided to do it in SGC graded cards. Most of the cards I picked up were already graded, and you can see obviously I've got a variety of SGC flips that and the variations they had throughout the years. A few of them I just couldn't find in SGC holders, and so I just ended up buying raw cards and submitting myself. And I'm not normally a high grade collector at all, and grades in this subset that I have, they vary from 35 to an 80, which good plus to XMet, 2.5 to 6 would be PSA equivalents. Let's kind of get started the cards here. I apologize in advance. This video will probably be kind of long because I tend to ramble, and I really have a passion for baseball history, and I'll talk a lot about the players. So the cards in the subset are cards 475 through 495. It starts off with the manager card, which features the Yankees manager Casey Stengel and Fred Haney. Obviously, Casey Stengel was a Hall of Fame manager. These two had met against each other in 57 World Series the year before. One thing I do want to note is with this subset, the players represented are not necessarily the starters in the All-Star game for that year. They would have been basically who Sport Magazine decided to designate as the All-Stars at each position for that season. They did every position plus in each league, plus they did a right-handed and a left-handed pitcher for each league, so a total of 20 players, 21 cards, and featuring the manager card, which features the two managers. So of those 20 cards, you've got 11 Hall of Fame players and one Hall of Fame manager featured in this subset. Okay, and moving on, the next card you've got is one of the most significant in the subset is Stan Musial. And this is his first solo appearance on a Topps card. He'd previously been exclusively signed with Bowman prior to this. So his first time Topps was able to get him on one of their cards, and they knew collectors would be really interested in acquiring him. And so him and Mickey Mantle in this subset were actually triple printed. So as a kid, in 58, if you were opening a pack of this last series, the Topps cards, there was an excellent chance you were going to get a Stan Musial or a Mickey Mantle in your pack. If you notice, the backs on these, they've all got a blurb about each player from Sport Magazine, extolling why their virtues as a player and why they were selected as the All-Star. And it's also got a breakdown of their stats against the individual teams in the league, as opposed to their standard base cards, which just had their season stats. Okay, and next card in set here, Bill Skowron. Nickname was Moose. He was an 8-time All-Star with the Yankees. A bit of an underrated player. Won 4 World Series there with the Yankees, and also won one with the Dodgers. And this is one of the highest graded cards I've got in the subset when I belted. Picked this up in an SGC 80. Next, I've got Johnny Temple, who was kind of a traditional leadoff hitter and popular player for the Cincinnati Reds. He's one of 3 Cincinnati Reds that appears in this subset. Next, the American League second baseman is Nellie Fox, great player and a Hall of Famer. Following year in '59, he was going to be the MVP of the league. He's one of 3 White Sox that are in this subset. Then moving to the third baseman, you had Eddie Matthews, one of 3 Atlanta Braves in the set, also a Hall of Famer. And for the American League, you had Frank Malzone, kind of an underrated player as well. Was an 8-time All-Star. He won 3 Gold Gloves with the Boston Red Sox. He was considered a pretty exceptional defensive player. Actually, he won 3 straight Gold Gloves from '57 to '59, I believe, and then the next year when Brooks Robinson won his first, and he won the next 16. So at that time, he was considered, the best third baseman in the league probably, but it would only last another year or so. Next, then one of my favorite players, Ernie Banks, Mr. Cub. He having the best seasons of his career at this time. He was a 58 and 59 National League MVP on his way to a Hall of Fame career. And then next for the American League shortstop is Luis Aparicio, and really probably one of the most underrated players in my opinion. Just an exceptional player, probably the premier defensive shortstop of this era. He was a 13-time All-Star, 9 Gold Gloves. Ted Williams himself actually called him the greatest shortstop he'd ever seen. Then moving on to the next card, then it starts with the left fielders. For the National League was Frank Robinson, getting into the prime of his career at this time. In fact, he was win 2 MVPs, one as in the National League, one in the American League in the seasons following this. And then here for the left fielder for the American League, Ted Williams, the Splendid Splinter. And this is, another significant card from the set, as this is the final time that Ted Williams would appear as a player during his career on a Topps card. He'd play one more season in '59, but in '59 he would have an exclusive contract with Fleer, and Fleer basically created an entire set honoring his career as a player. And so he didn't have a Topps card in that season. So this here, the 58, is the last one on a Topps card that you'll see of him as a player. And you can kind of tell from the image, he's at kind of the end of his run as a player, but still, just outstanding image of him there. Next here, center fielders, you've got just a great run of players here right in this middle of the set here. You've got Willie Mays, the Say kid, guy who'd already been an MVP of the National League already at this point, right here in the prime of his career. Next up, it's Mickey Mantle, and probably the biggest star in all of baseball at the time. Like I said, this was also a triple printed card, like the Musial, because Topps knew what their collectors were wanting. Is that they were going to want Musial, and they wanted a good chance at getting Mantle. And for me personally as a collector, this was the very first Mickey Mantle contemporary card that I ever acquired of him during his playing days. Uh, I had to purchase it raw. Uh, I picked it up at an auction and I submitted it for grading myself. And it's just, you know, an SGC 35. You can tell it's got some issues and that, but it fit into my budget, and I was, you know, just really excited to add a Mickey Mantle to my collection. And you know, it's if you're looking to get into his cards and you're looking for one that you can acquire at a reasonable price, this 58 All Star is probably, you know, one of the most readily available cards that was created, and it's pretty iconic as well. Bob Costas is famous for carrying around a copy of this card in his wallet as well. And so next on the set here, we've got Hammer and Hank. You know, he's just coming off probably the greatest season of his career, which was 57 when he was the National League MVP. They won the World Series that year. You know, just you know, at that time, it's just right there in the peak of his career as well. And you know, here if you notice that in this subset here, that's basically 7 straight Hall of Fame players there in a row there. So I mean, this is just a subset that's just packed with some of the best players in baseball history of that era. This next one here, Jackie Jensen. He was 58 was probably, you know, the best year of his career as well. He was the American League MVP there in 1958. And Jackie Jensen is a guy that has a really interesting career story. He was a tremendous college athlete. He went to Cal, and he was not only, you know, an All-American baseball player, he was also an All-American halfback on the football team. He was, I believe, top 5 in the Heisman voting his final year. His point of fame is that he's the first person that ever appeared in a Rose Bowl, a World Series, and an All-Star game. At this time, he was in the best years of his career. Unfortunately, he suffered severe anxiety and a fear, basically, of flying. And at this time, you know, baseball is expanding further and further west, and it was going more from mostly travel by train and bus to having to fly on a regular basis, and he was absolutely terrified of flying. Wasn't able to do it, was suffer panic attacks and severe anxiety every time just when they would get to the airport. It was a real burden for him here during these years, even though he was having, you know, tremendous success as a player. This phobia was just consuming his life, and the Red Sox were doing everything they could to try and get him counseling and therapy to try and help him overcome it, and he just couldn't do it. He ended up playing the 59 season as well, and basically at the end of the 59 season, before the start of the 60 season, he just said, nope, that's it, I'm not playing anymore. And he basically spent the whole 1960 season out of baseball and didn't even play. He attempted to come back again in 61, but still suffered, you know, from the anxiety issues and being away from the game for a full season. It had kind of a lackluster season, and I don't think he even got all the way through the season before he just decided that he'd had enough, and that was gonna be it for him. and retired for good. So, just kind of a story of a guy that, just basically let his own personal psychosis, ruin what was pretty extraordinary athletic career that he was going on. Next up, we get into the catchers, and it starts with Ed Bailey, who was catcher there for the Reds. He played in, I believe, like 6 All-Star games. This is one of those spots in the set where you kind of wonder, hey, what could have been if Roy Campanella hadn't had his tragic car accident, and if he'd been still an active player, maybe he's included in this subset instead of Bailey. You would have had just even more star power in this set, but Bailey wasn't a slouch of a player by any means. And for the American League, you had Sherm Lawler, who was a very good catcher as well. Probably at this time, he was probably the best defensive catcher in baseball. 9 All-Star games. He won about 3 Golden Gloves during his career. He'd actually been with the Yankees for a time during his career, and was battling Yogi Berra to be the starting catcher, and basically, they decided to go with the offense that Berra could provide rather than Lawler's defense, and so he moved on. And this time, Berra was kind of on the downside of his career. Otherwise, there's probably he could have been a choice to be included in this subset as well. So this whole catcher position, it's like, man, if you could have had Campanella and Berra both in this subset, it probably been even more impressive than it already is. Here we get to the pitchers. You start with the National League, which Bob Friend, who was with the Pirates, and Friend's kind of an interesting guy as well. He's actually got a losing record for his career, but played for some dreadful teams during a good portion of his career. In fact, one year he actually led the league in ERA on a team that was in last place. But in '58, the Pirates, with Roberto Clemente, they were actually pretty decent. I believe they were second or third in the National League that year, and so he was having a good season and actually won 22 games that year, and led the National League in wins. So this was probably, from a statistical standpoint, it was probably, and from a win standpoint for sure, it was the best year of his career. And despite his record, there was a good stretch there where he was probably certainly one of the top 5 pitchers in the National League, just unfortunately not on one of the better teams. And this is another card that I purchased raw and submitted myself. The Ed Bailey was another one. I don't think I mentioned that when we were on that one. And moving on here to the next one is another card that was a raw purchase for me. Bob Curley, nicknamed Bullet Bob. And Bob was at this time certainly at the height of his career. He had a fastball in the high 90s. He was, just a super powerful pitcher. He won the Cy Young Award there in '58, voted the best pitcher in the league, or actually in all of baseball, and he was the World Series MVP for the Yankees there as they were winning the World Series there in '58. Unfortunately, within the next season, he started to experience arm trouble, lost some velocity on the fastball, so he started trying to throw more breaking pitches, which added to the injury troubles that he had, and career was really never the same, unfortunately, after this season. And he's a guy that you kind of wonder if he was around during our modern game. He was maybe a guy that might have benefited from an orthoscopic surgery, possibly even maybe a Tommy John surgery, if that had been an option for him. what type of career he might have been able to have, not for the arm trouble that he had. And then left-handed pitchers, we've got the only Hall of Fame pitcher that's included in this subset, which is Warren Spahn, probably one of the best left-handed pitchers of all time. This era, Sandy Koufax hadn't quite come into his own and gone on his stretch of dominance, so Warren was certainly the best left-hander in the league, considered at that time. He had just won the Cy Young the previous year. We've got, for the American League, is Herb Score. And Herb Score is a really interesting choice for this subset and kind of a fascinating career story as well. He was basically a rookie phenom when he burst onto the scene. He was the 55 Rookie of the Year. He was leading the league in strikeouts early on. And then in 57, he suffered just a tragic injury, throwing a pitch and a batted ball come right back at him and struck him dead square in the face and fractured bones in his face, and just was a terrible, terrible injury. As his career was never really the same after that. He did come back and he did pitch in 58. An interesting choice that Sport Magazine selected him. I think, it's more based on what he had done up to that point more than his performance there in 58. And then, unfortunately, after even in 58, I think by 61 or so, he was out of baseball, and his career was just never the same. Up until that injury, he was fearsome, and Yogi Berra, in his book, when he wrote a book called The All-Time Team, he selected Herb Score before his injury as one of the best pitchers that he'd ever faced in his career. And at that point, that's how much he was respected as a player. So, hey guys, I know this has been long. That's the end of it. I really appreciate you guys sticking with me on that. Hopefully, if you made it to the end, I think you must have found this enjoyable. I hope you liked it. Give me a like, give me a comment. I'm gonna be sharing more stuff coming up. I'll try and make sure that my videos going forward are not quite this long. But this first one, I had, a lot of cards I wanted to talk about and kind of show off, and I just knew this one was going to be a long one. But hopefully, if you like it, hit subscribe. Looking forward to sharing more stuff with you guys. Hey, have a good one.